Hello. So this video is going to be a performance review of Tank NYC's production of Matteo Esposito's play The Value of Many. Now, I had done a textual analysis of The Value of Many a while back. You should be seeing a link for that in the card. I don't know which side it'll show up, but I'll also put one down in the description. The play is really interesting, but seeing it done as a dramatic reading, not as a full performance, was an additional layer of sort of interestingness to it. So, the Tank NYC, as I understand it, is an organization that promotes the work of emerging artists or artists whose work otherwise might not be seen. And so Esposito getting a reading of his play in this venue is really good. It's a way of sort of building his profile in a way that I think he definitely deserves, because I've read a number of his plays. I've seen Zoom productions of several of them. He's a really good writer. So the dramatic reading was directed by Emma Richmond. It was a very, very good performance. Again, it's interesting to watch a dramatic reading of a play as opposed to a full performance, because the actual sort of scope of the interactions between the performers is much more limited by the form. In this case, each actor had a music stand in front of them with the script on it, and they read their parts from chairs. And so this is a pretty standard dramatic reading approach, but it basically means that, like, rather than characters entering and exiting, you had someone reading the stage directions that a character enters, a character exits, whatever it is. So, for instance, when Shirley, the cafe owner, brings customers coffees or waters or whatever it is, rather than actually seeing that actor, which in this case was Alyssa Parkhurst playing Shirley, rather than seeing her actually walk in with water or coffee or whatever it is, we have somebody reading stage directions. And the person reading the stage directions doesn't seem to be credited in the playbill or in the YouTube, the description below the YouTube video, which will also be linked below, by the way. But I mean, it's a different way of experiencing a performance. What you do have, though, is really interesting opportunities for actors to engage with the show and the characters without it being sort of huge overt engagement. So the basic premise of The Value of Many, you have Dexter and Larson, these two businessmen who come into a cafe. Working in this cafe is Shirley, the owner, and then Josh, a young man on the autism spectrum. Dexter is basically a dick to Josh. Larson tries to get him to stop, but Dexter continues. Shortly afterwards, they're in a car wreck, incidentally because Dexter can't see well while driving in the rain. And so I almost wonder if there's some hint of disability there anyway. But in this car crash, Larson is killed and Dexter is crippled. He's paralyzed, at least from the waist down, confined to a wheelchair. Shirley and Josh see this in the newspaper, and they want to do something nice for Dexter. Now, being a person with a disability, Dexter sort of revises his position on people with disabilities and whether or not they're capable of holding jobs, contributing to society, doing making money, doing the kinds of things that business people think are important in the world. And so Dexter wants to make amends for his bad conduct toward Josh. And so he persuades Bill, who had been his sort of assistant or something like this, and is now going to take over the business. Dexter persuades Bill to hire Josh to work in this company. And then the play ends with all of them going to the cemetery so that Josh can leave a flower for Larson, because he was a good person and he helped sort of facilitate this change in Dexter. So I talk more about the play itself in the video about the text itself. Again, link down in the description below. The performance at the Tank NYC. Again, I think they did a really, really good job working within the comparative limitations of a dramatic reading to actually bring these characters to life, both as individual characters, but also in terms of their relationships and the way that they interact with one another. So, probably in terms of creating the individual character, Nicome Anderson, and I apologize if I pronounced your first name wrong, the actor who played Josh, he probably had the most opportunity and was most successful in terms of making Josh feel like a real person. So we're introduced to Josh as he's cleaning tables in the cafe, right? So what Anderson did was, with his music stand holding his script, he sort of mimed wiping it down. When the stage directions say that he starts cleaning chairs and things, Anderson would like start mime wiping down the hole of the holding up the music stand, stuff like this. And then the other thing that Josh does that's really a visual element is at some point he takes a string out of his pocket and starts stimming, which is basically a behavior in which some people on the autism spectrum or with other disabilities will sort of artificially stimulate themselves in order to regain control of something, of a situation, in order to sort of focus their mind, whatever it is. There's various reasons I think that people stim, but it's a very common behavior. And so what Anderson did was he actually held one end of the drawstring on his hoodie and stimmed with the other hand. So you saw this behavior that's so central to Josh's identity as a character with disability, as a character on the autism spectrum. And so having that performed worked really, really well to build that character. But then you also had opportunities for characters who established the relationships between one another. So Dexter, played by Chris Erdman, there are periods of time where Dexter just stares at Josh, trying to make him uncomfortable. Dexter is kind of an asshole for the first half of the play. And so Erdman would stare at Anderson during those periods. And so, again, you kind of build those relationships. And then Luke Maloney, who played Larson, he would constantly shift his focus between criticizing Erdman for criticizing Dexter, played by Erdman. So his focus would be on Erdman as he was criticizing Dexter. But then when he was apologizing to Josh or Shirley, He would Maloney would shift his focus to Anderson or Parkhurst, depending on who he was apologizing to. And so again, you got the sense of how those relationships work, even within a performance in which every actor is stationary in their chair with their script in front of them on a music stand. You still got the sense of how this play functions and what the universe of this play looks like.